You are listening to A Scary State, and this week we're talking about Connecticut. So, Lauren?
Yes, Kenzie?
Let's get scary.
We have another storm happening while we record.
This one I feel like is just more rainy than anything else.
Yeah, I don't think there's much thunder.
No.
So let me tell you this creepy thing that happened the other day.
Wonderful.
Okay. So Joe was out in D.C. going to see a concert, and so it was just going to be me and Richie that night, and he was like, oh, I'll go pick up Indian food, and then we can watch Wentworth. And I said, amazing.
Perfect.
Beautiful day. 2 things Joe hates. So I was like, this is amazing. So he was like, okay, I'll go pick it up after work. So we put in our orders. Everything was great. So I'm sitting on the couch watching something else because I'm waiting for him to get here. And I hear it sounds like our screen door opens. So
that's why I keep looking over there, because it sounds like someone's about to come in the door.
I know.
Yeah.
So it sounded like someone opened it. Roy got up from laying over here and ran to the door and was like staring at the door. And I thought it was Richie. So I'm like waiting and waiting. And then like 2 or 3 minutes pass, and obviously he didn't come in. So I like got up and I went to look. He's not there. No one's there. I was like, okay, maybe he like forgot something in his car, and he went back out to his car after like realizing when he got to the door. No, it just wasn't him. No idea what it was. Super creepy.
Well, he is still happening. And so I'm wondering if it's like...
But Roy's not reacting to it.
He just came downstairs
to look out the window.
Oh, I thought it was because he heard the door. Because he came down right afterwards.
No, he went to go look out the window.
Or maybe he heard it and went to go look out the window to see if someone was there.
Oh, I don't know. Because when he did it for me, he stood right here and stared at the front door. But from our couch, I can't see the front door.
Yeah, I mean, I can see a sliver.
But yeah, so it was very creepy. And then when Richie came home, I was like, did you by any chance
come
home and leave?
Can you lock your screen door?
We can, but it's a pain in the butt because it gets stuck. Like, not the lock gets stuck, but the door itself gets stuck.
Yeah.
So you have to like push it open with a ton of force to actually open it. And it's really loud and really annoying.
Because I'm wondering if it's a day like today where it's probably windy out too, if it's like, if you lock it, if the screen door will stay closed more so that it doesn't hit against your door as often and sound like someone's going to come in.
Maybe, but that day it was a perfectly clear, nothing day. So it's very creepy.
Maybe you do have a ghost.
Maybe
Edward has decided to come here because he knows that this place is probably a little bit more permanent.
Who's Edward?
Not Edward, Albert.
I was like, do we have another ghost?
His twin brother, Edward.
Yes.
Yeah.
Edward and Albert.
Edward and Albert. And Edward's a little bit noisier than Albert. He hasn't quite learned house guest etiquette. Meaning,
come on, dude.
People that live in the house with you, you can't show yourself.
We started hearing like really slight banging a couple nights ago. And Richie's like, am I hearing banging? What am I hearing? And we think it was the people next door just moving in and out.
Yeah.
But I was like, I swear to God, if we hear banging.
I feel like you can always end up hearing people's like doors and stuff sometimes.
It sounded so close to the banging that we heard at our old place.
I wonder if their layout is like yours, or if it's like flipped so that your stairs are next to each other, and like how much that sound would create with like walking up and down the stairs.
They're definitely higher than us though.
Like elevation wise?
Yeah, because if you see their deck, their deck door is like up here.
Oh. Oh, interesting. I wonder, that probably definitely has something to do with it too, if shit's not lined up.
Yeah, it's not. So I think they're different designs.
Huh. That's interesting. Now I'm curious, if it wasn't raining and we weren't recording, I would love to just go peek behind people's houses and see if I could figure out.
Oh, some are so weird. Some have really small decks. It's like
some
wild.
Also have those, like a lot of the end units, except for yours, have those nice, cute little front porches.
Oh, I know.
And I feel like you're the only end unit that doesn't have
I know. I've seen those all over. They have like the cutest little like mini wraparounds.
Yeah, when I was driving in, I was like, oh my God, she has an end unit. She's going to have the cutest front porch.
No, we have an annoying front porch. It's a stoop.
You have a stoop.
We have a stoop.
Yeah. It's okay. I had a stoop.
It's fine. I don't mind the stoop.
We sat out on my stoop a lot, remember?
Yeah, I do. Did you ever watch Hey Arnold? The stoop kid's afraid to leave his stoop.
And then he did one day.
Yeah.
I mean, he just stepped one foot off. He still did it.
How did he go to school?
I don't think he did.
Oh.
He was like way older.
Oh.
Yeah.
I don't remember that show very well.
I've rewatched it way more recently than one would think that one would watch that show at this age. Oh, a lot, especially like this past year doing homework and stuff, because I need something on that like I'm not going to watch.
Yeah.
But it can't be quiet.
No, yeah.
Sometimes if homework is really hard to get done, I'll turn off the TV and put on music because I'm like, I can't.
Because if you really don't want to do
anything,
it, you'll do anything else.
Like an episode of SpongeBob I've seen 85 million times, and I will be glued to it as if it's the most fascinating thing I've ever seen just because I don't want to fucking do my homework.
Yeah, I get that.
It's like the same thing when I was a kid. One more semester, baby.
You got this.
Woohoo. All right. It's time to connect it cut. I don't know. I was trying to think of a good one and I couldn't.
Yeah, no, that wasn't good.
I was thinking like cut it out. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do. Connecticut.
And then I was trying to think of like cut it out and saying the facts. And I was like, nope. It's not coming together. We're just going to say the first thing I think of.
Come to Connecticut's slice of coastal paradise. Casting off into the Long Island Sound, the 800 acres of Bluff Point State Park Coastal Reserve are the last that remain untouched along the Connecticut coast. This peninsula is accessible only by foot, as its reserve status doesn't allow for motorized vehicles on land.
Didn't we talk about Bluff something else?
Yes. Balls Bluff?
No.
No.
Sandstone Bluff in Illinois. Hunt for hidden treasure along the beaches and bluffs, Rhode Island.
Oh. Bluffs.
So maybe it's, I wonder if it's not the same bluffs, but bluffs that run along the same coast line.
Yeah.
Shared coast bluffs. If I keep saying bluffs.
Well, not to worry. The loop from the parking lot to Bluff Point and back is less than 4 miles and suitable for novice hikers.
Nice.
Walking along the footpath, hikers will see vegetation and wildlife change as they move through forests, grasslands, wetlands, and other natural habitats.
That's cool.
At the end of the peninsula, plant life becomes sparse because of the heavy winds. That same wind has been working in combination with the water for years, eroding and shaping Bluff Point's narrow beach. Do you want me to read out exactly this?
I figured it might be best because there's no way for me to like put it in our citation.
Hey, ChatGPT, can you give me 10 cool nature facts about Connecticut?
I love the voice. I love the whole acting experience. That you went right into it. Beautiful. Beautifully done. Beautiful.
Sure. Here are 10 cool nature facts about Connecticut. 1. The Connecticut River is the longest river in New England, stretching over 400 miles from the Canadian border to Long Island Sound. It supports diverse ecosystems and is a critical resource for wildlife and human communities alike. The mountain laurel, Kalmia latifolia, Connecticut state flower, blooms beautifully in late spring. It's a native shrub that thrives in the state's woodlands and is known for its stunning clusters of pink and white flowers.
You're doing great.
Thank you. Connecticut is home to several historic lighthouses, including the New London Harbor Lighthouse, which is the oldest lighthouse in Connecticut, dating back to 1760. Dang. How did they do lighthouses back then? Before there was electricity? Was it just like a candle?
Did they have lighthouses before electricity?
When did we get electricity?
Like the mid to late 1800s, I believe.
Did you not hear when I read that this dates back to 1760?
Oh, sorry. I feel like, yeah, they probably had they probably used gas.
Okay.
Gas lanterns?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Making just a candle.
They probably had a fuck ton of candles and used a giant mirror and reflected the light from the candles out to sea. And if one blew out, they used one candle to light no, they probably fucking used gas.
You didn't know either. Don't act like I'm stupid.
I'm saying it for the both of us.
Okay, good. Connecticut is known as the nutmeg state, although it doesn't grow nutmeg.
That's misleading.
This nickname is thought to have originated from the colonial era when Connecticut merchants were reputed to sell fake nutmeg carved from wood.
So you just kept with the fakeness. Misleading.
Isn't it nutmeg, if you eat too much of it, it gives you hallucinations?
What?
Is that a thing?
Nutmeg?
Yeah.
You naughty nut.
They say that some symptoms of nutmeg toxicity include gastrointestinal symptoms, mouth dryness, and pupil involvement. In severe cases,
pupil involvement?
Dilation or constriction. Yeah, that's
pupil involvement.
Yeah, that's not a great term.
What a way to say that.
In severe cases, seizure, hallucinations, confusion, tachycardia, and hemodynamic instability, unstable blood pressure. It's tachycardia.
I think that's something with the heart.
Yes, cardia. It's a condition that has been associated with syncope episodes. I'm asking you what this is. Oh, it's when your heart beats over 100 beats a minute.
I was going to... Wait, what?
Yeah.
It's when your
heart... a medical term for a heart rate over 100 beats a minute.
That happens to me all the time.
Maybe you have tachycardia.
Only when I get overly emotional.
Yeah, it says a fast heart rate isn't always a concern. I think it's average.
Oh, yeah, no.
But yeah, so nutmeg, too much of it can be toxic. and can cause hallucinations.
I don't even know what nutmeg goes into.
Have you ever had cinnamon toast when you were younger? Cinnamon sugar, you can put a little bit of nutmeg on there.
I didn't. My sister did the cinnamon on her toast. I just did butter. I did have Cinnamon Toast Crunch, though.
Not the same thing, but okay.
Just trying to connect.
The Gillette Castle State Park features a unique castle built by actor William Gillette, known for his portrayal of Sherlock Holmes. The castle is perched on a hill overlooking the Connecticut River and is surrounded by hiking trails and beautiful scenery. The state is home to several endangered species, including the eastern box turtle and the New England cottontail rabbit.
Peter Cottontail?
Here goes Peter Cottontail, hopping down the bunny trail.
I didn't know that was the name of an actual rabbit.
Yes!
I didn't know that.
Because their tail looks like a little poof of cotton.
It sounded like Roy just went...
Oh, I thought it sounded like a knock. I think it's our ice maker.
Ah.
Yes. So we won't think too much on that.
Wow.
Conservation efforts are in place to protect these and other native species.
Well, we have to. He's got a whole book.
A whole book.
A whole book.
Song and book.
Song and book.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The same Peter.
I think so.
I think so, too.
How common of a name is Peter?
I mean, for a rabbit?
Yeah, not at all.
No.
The charter oak in Hartford, which fell in a storm in 1856, was estimated to be over 1,000 years old. It played a significant role in Connecticut's history, allegedly hiding the charter of the Connecticut colony from the British in 1687. I mean, that's clever. Who's going to look in a tree?
Okay, but all I can imagine is like, you know, like when we went to Blue Ridge and like all those people lined up on a tree.
Yes.
And like I'm just picturing like all of these like settlers just standing right behind the tree and be like, okay, nobody move and they cannot see us.
Oh my God. Connecticut has over 110 state parks and forests, covering more than 250,000 acres. These areas provide habitat for wildlife and recreational opportunities for residents and visitors. The Long Island Sound estuary provides vital habitats for a variety of marine life and supports commercial and recreational fisheries. It also offers beautiful coastal views and numerous opportunities for boating and fishing. Connecticut is famous for its stunning fall foliage. The state's diverse tree species, including sugar maples, oaks, and birches, create a vibrant tapestry of red, orange, and yellow during the autumn months, attracting visitors from around the country. These facts highlight... Oh, here, in my GBT voice.
Yeah.
These facts highlight the rich natural heritage and beauty of Connecticut.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Round of applause.
Thank you, thank you. But yeah, Connecticut is very pretty. We drive through it when we go up to visit Joe's family.
Oh, yeah. I love New England in the fall.
Yes.
They win for fall.
Yes.
They win for fall. South wins for for winter.
Okay.
Well, because it's warm there. And it's warm, but no humidity.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's like the warm that we like.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Spring. Well, nowhere spring for you.
No.
You always lose in spring. But I would say like pretty much a lot of places, especially here that has like a lot of trees.
Mm-hmm.
I love seeing all the flowers.
I do too.
I feel bad because I'm like, everyone is dying right now.
Oh, everyone's dying.
But at least it's pretty.
But it's pretty. That's always how I know if it's my allergies or if I'm sick, because I have a lot of friends who get allergies. So if they're also feeling, I'm like, oh, thank God, because I'll be feeling awful. And I'm like, oh my God, do I have COVID? Am I sick? Do I have my cold? Like, what's going on? And then they're like, oh, I feel awful. I'm like, allergies, thank God.
You have a support group of allergists.
I do. I do. And then Joe now starts to get allergies. He doesn't like to admit it.
Him.
I know. That's what he says. He doesn't like to admit it, but it does happen. So when it does happen, I'm like, oh, allergies. Because he's like, you got me sick. I'm like, allergies are not contagious. So no, I didn't. And two, you have them.
Yes.
He still doesn't want to accept it.
It's okay. First stage is denial.
Denial's been like 3 years.
Well, sometimes, everyone grieves in their own way. You had a lifetime, okay? He's just catching up. All right? Cut him some slack.
I didn't even have the time to adjust to it. It was just always my life. So it wasn't ever like I had a grieving phase.
Exactly.
It just was what I was born with.
Exactly. And not everyone was born that way.
Lucky them.
But now you're a pro.
I would prefer not to be. My coworkers get mad at me, one in particular, when she's not feeling well. I'm like, do you think you have allergies? And she goes, no, Lauren, I'm just sick. And I'm like, wow. I bet you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Oh, what's her name? Oh, our friend? Her name's Brie. Nuh-uh.
Yeah.
I was going to say that, but I was like, I can't tell if this attitude is in a joking way.
It's both.
Or like a serious way.
Oh, it's joking, but it's also both.
Okay, then yeah.
She's like, stop trying to pull your push your allergies on me. I'm like, I'm just giving you an excuse for if it's not a sickness.
See, if you had said that I would have known right away. What spooky tea you pouring, Lauren?
So today I'm going to cover a state hospital.
I think this is the first time in months you haven't asked me who's going first.
I think it's just because I remembered that I did not have to edit the intro. So I know when that's the case, it's because I didn't edit first.
Yeah. Maybe it's like easier now.
Because it is always nice. I mean, it doesn't take long. It's just like, oh, just one part today.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So the Fairfield Hills State Hospital in Newtown, literally Newtown, is known to be one of southwestern Connecticut's creepiest spots.
That's where
Sandy Hook.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was telling this to Richie the other day because he was like, oh, what are you covering? And I told him because he's from Massachusetts, so close to Connecticut. He was like, isn't that Sandy Hook? And I was like, oh, yeah, I think it is.
Oh, just the way you said Newtown? I wasn't sure.
Oh, no, it's because there's a Newtown and there's a Middletown and there's just like not very good with like they're just telling you like, okay, that was in the middle of the state. This one's new.
Okay. That's good to know.
That's where my mind was.
Got it.
So in the 20th century, Fairfield Hills State Hospital served as a psychiatric hospital. The hospital opened its doors in 1931 to help alleviate the overcrowding that the other two state hospitals, Connecticut Valley Hospital in Middletown, which opened in 1868, and Norwich State Hospital, which opened in 1904, were facing. So as we always talk about with like mental hospitals and state hospitals, there's always so much overcrowding.
Sure.
So yeah, those two, some of their patients are coming to this one.
I'm sure that one eventually was overcrowded itself.
Yes, we will get to that.
Wow.
Good guess.
Thank you.
Walter P. Crabtree was hired to design the facility. Starting construction in 1930, he built 16 buildings in total. Yes, built buildings, which sat on 607.
I didn't even.
Oh, because you do that to me often.
Yeah.
Like the explorers explored.
Just so focused on your story.
Thank you. Sat on 670 acres of land which mostly consisted of a forest and large farm meadows.
Acres and picturing how large or small they are is the same for carrots. And picturing how small or large like a diamond is.
Oh.
I don't really understand it. I don't
carrot.
Yeah, I know. That's why I said diamond.
Ah, yes.
Threw that context in there.
It's just big.
Yeah. And then like 1 acre, I'm like, that's a lot of land, right?
Well, if you remember my parents' house, that was on 1/4 acre.
That seemed like a normal amount.
Yeah. So picture 4 of our properties, and that's 1 acre.
Oh. See, now all I'm going to do is be like, how many Lauren's houses?
This would be a lot. So the original buildings were all fireproof, built of red brick in the colonial style. Crabtree also designed the facility to be campus-like, meaning that instead of the hospital being one huge building, there were many different smaller buildings all over the property, each being designated for something different, so like a college campus. When the cornerstone of the building was laid, Senator Roger W. Eddy gave the speech at the ceremony. He explained the superiority of Fairfield as, quote, the laying of the cornerstone of the building, from which will be administered the conduct of an institution which we will believe will surpass either of its predecessors in the state, in its cure for those unfortunate people whose minds have been deranged from strange fantasies, who have lost control over their thoughts and emotions. So
it's a fancy way of saying we're going to be better than you.
Yeah. 32 patients were transferred to Fairfield on June 1st, 1933. Fairfield Hills was known as housing those who were, quote, mentally ill, or in other words, the criminally insane. But it also wasn't uncommon for patients to be committed against their will for some conditions that aren't considered conditions anymore, such as postpartum depression or just rebellion in teenagers.
Hysteria,
yep. Women not listening to their man.
Mm-hmm.
Partly because of this, but overcrowding became a problem at Fairfield, as around when it opened, it soon had over 500 patients with only 3 doctors.
How'd it go from 32 to 500?
So many people.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And how much time?
Just a couple months.
Damn. That's insane.
All over, though, the overcrowding wasn't stopping, and the other 2 hospitals couldn't take any more patients, so 500 more beds were added to the already struggling Fairfield.
Did you say already what its capacity is supposed to be?
500.
Oh. So they're at capacity, and now they've just doubled capacity.
Uh-huh.
Got it. Okay.
Yes. But Fairfield didn't have the room for these 500 beds, as all of the dorms were already full. So they resorted to adding beds to day rooms, porches, examining rooms, and sewing rooms. But even that wasn't enough space, so some beds were placed in the dining room, in club rooms in the nurses' home, and the unoccupied dorm for unmarried nurses.
What the fuck?
Yeah. At the time, Dr. Roy Leake was in charge as superintendent. He had come from the Connecticut State Hospital in Middleton. He considered this, beds all over, to be a large safety risk via, quote, untidy and destructive patients.
No shit.
Though he did make some unknown changes, he ultimately resigned in October of 1935. Everything always said he made changes, and then he resigned. And it's like, what changes did he make?
So what, opened 1931, you said? Something like that?
33.
33. So he's only there for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
That's insane.
Yeah. His role went to Dr. Clifford D. Moore. Just a year into Moore being superintendent, a new method of treatment was introduced, hydrotherapy.
Uh-oh.
So we know that's either you're in very, very hot water for a long amount of time. That's usually, if someone's manic, it's like a way to like depress them kind of. Or you're in freezing cold water. So I feel like that's if you're more lethargic maybe?
To like wake you up?
To kind of, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
By 1941, the overload of patients continued and staff turnover was high.
No kidding.
Not only was this a very demanding and exhausting job, but World War II was going on and the staff services were needed elsewhere. This is when the hospital began putting out advertisements in the local papers looking for young kids who needed or wanted a summer job.
Oh my God.
So this helped a bit with the staffing, but it was bringing in people who just didn't have the skills or knowledge needed. It was also around this time that electroshock therapy was making its way onto the scene and finally arrived at Fairfield.
Oh, goodness.
One nurse who worked here around this time said that she recalled when electroshock therapy was being used. She said you would send a patient off to therapy and they would come back a zombie. So, our New England Legends podcast defined electroshock therapy in a good way. Well, in a concise way. They said, quote, doctors place electrodes on the temples of patients.
You mean like a layman's way?
Yeah. Doctors place electrodes on the temples of patients with severe schizophrenia, depression, or other serious mental disorders and then deliver a shock to the temporal lobe. The idea is to induce a seizure in the patient. The thought is that a seizure is almost like a reboot of the brain and may help reduce or even stop some of the extreme behavior.
So they basically like, let's turn the brain back off and turn it back on again.
And see what happens.
Oh, my Lord.
Conditions in the hospital continued to deteriorate, and eventually, over time, there were several suicides and other mysterious deaths on the hospital grounds. In November of that year, a terrifying discovery was made. A patient died suddenly and mysteriously during their electroshock therapy treatment. Due to the peculiarity of their death, an autopsy was performed, and it was revealed that the man had actually been beaten to death.
Oh my God.
5 employees were fired as a result. 2 of the attendants were convicted of manslaughter and 1 of assault. The hospital was now being looked into more, and patient abuse was suddenly in the spotlight. Partly in reason because straitjackets were a super common practice. They were usually used on a patient who was more prone to hurting themselves or others. But due to the population of the hospital and the lack of employees, some patients would end up spending hours in these restraints. So long that their arms would go numb from lack of circulation. That would be my worst, like...
And I'm assuming criminals and non-criminals are all mixed together.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely not anything separating them.
Yeah.
And it didn't ever go into this, but I wonder if they had different, like, male, like, cells and female cells.
Doesn't sound like it.
Yeah, it
if
doesn't
they're putting
sound like
beds, like, in the middle of a dining room.
Right.
Does not sound like there's any sort of categorization at all.
So what was also bad was that there was a notion that there were quite a few employees who were, quote, prone to bouts of drunkenness. So coming to work drunk.
Not okay, but understandable.
Yeah. Dr. Moore was afraid that this news would tarnish the image of the hospital, but on the flip side, the community was worried that this would cause patients to try to escape. Because if it's really bad conditions, this was such a concern that a siren was installed at the hospital.
A what?
A siren. No. I had a weird little accent there.
A siren.
A siren. I was like, maybe don't catch it.
Oh, I caught it.
It was set to go off whenever a patient escaped, and those living in the surrounding area soon knew that hearing this loud siren meant that you had to run inside and lock all of the doors and windows.
I can't imagine at this time, because if this is also like in the 50s, they also had sirens for like if there's going to be a nuclear attack from communists. So how do you know which siren is which? If you have these sirens in the Midwest, you got nuclear weapon sirens, you got tornado sirens, you got mental health patient sirens. How do you know which siren is which? Is it a different kind of beep? Is it a different kind of siren?
I don't know. Yeah, is this like a siren to go inside and lock the doors? Is this a siren to go into my bomb shelter? Is this a siren to go into my tornado shelter?
Correct. You know, like, don't the different, what are those people called? First responders have different sounds for their...
Probably, but I could not tell them apart.
I think there's also different sounds in different countries, too.
I think so.
Or maybe that's a ringtone. Or maybe it's both.
A ringtone?
Yeah, like when you call and you hear that.
Oh, there is actually. In Australia, it's very different than here.
Yeah.
I just know that because of Wentworth.
I think London or Britain or whatever that place is called, UK.
Oh, yeah.
Has a different one too.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Ringtones and sirens are very different, though. One time, a woman recalled that one night she heard a noise on her porch. She opened the door to see what the noise was, and there was a naked man just standing there on her porch. He had walked right over from Fairfield. The woman held a shotgun on him until the cops arrived to take him back. The staff reduced drastically, and Dr. Moore was given permission to hire conscientious objectors and their wives. I tried to look up what this was. Definition didn't make any sense to me.
Wait, what?
Conscientious objectors and their wives.
And their wives?
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah. The 40s also brought about a lot of sickness to the hospital, mainly waves of influenza and bronchopneumonia.
Oh my God.
In just 1 month alone, December of 1944, 41 patients died. Just in 1 month.
Oh my God.
Then on May 25th, 1946, frontal lobotomies began at Fairfield.
Oh.
This hospital is actually credited with having been the first place to perform a lobotomy to treat mental illnesses in the U.S.
See, okay, I was like, something about this hospital's name sounds familiar.
Well, it could be that, because that's what they're credited with. Dr. Bernard S. Brody started performing these lobotomies on patients with a, quote, destructive history. Within just 1 year, 107 patients had been lobotomized. Of those, 35 were discharged as slightly improved, 26% had not improved, and 4% had died due to post-operative complications. The remaining 35% were just never accounted for.
What's crazy is that, like, and I don't know when we figured this out, but of all places to injure, they're injuring the frontal lobe, which gives you
your emotions and your
your practical thinking.
Yeah, not your emotions.
Yeah. And you're damaging the one thing that you want to be used. I don't know when
they pretty much did it to just calm patients down.
Right. But like if you think about someone who's like impulsive and violent and things like that, like they're not using their frontal cortex to think logically and think through things, like they're using emotion to think. And so if you're thinking of a lobotomy and where that goes, it goes right there, which that's what, all women are waiting for a man to get fully developed is their prefrontal cortex. And I don't think that ever seems to happen. But I don't know when they figured this out, like the different parts of the brain. Like I don't know when that was discovered.
I don't know. I know I learned it in one of my classes, but I can't remember that. So treatments obviously were awful. Joyce Staudinger, who worked as a clerk in the hospital from 1983 to 1995, said that she mostly felt bad for the patients.
This thing was open for a while.
Yeah.
Especially given its reputation. I'm surprised it was open for so long.
They needed it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even later when we learn more about like mental health and...
I get into it.
Okay.
Yeah. Some of these patients were so affected by their medication that they were left staring up at ceilings or walking in a daze. Other times, she would witness the way that out-of-control patients are being treated. And as we know, many of these patients were reportedly mistreated and subjected to cruel methods of therapy and cruel conditions overall. Some treatments they were subjected to were what we mentioned already, hydrotherapy, electroshock therapy, and lobotomies.
I thought hydrotherapy was supposed to be like not too bad if you did it right.
If you do it right.
Yeah.
But I doubt they're doing things correctly at this time.
No, I know. I'm just thinking like the other two like are absolutely not helpful no matter how you do it. Not a good idea.
Yeah.
But I wasn't sure if that one there was like if you do it like...
No, I think it was just bad because you're either going in scalding hot water or freezing cold water and you're submerged. And at least in one of the shows I watched, you had like a sheet that kind of went over and kept your head out. So you can't even use your hands.
Oh.
Yeah. But they were also subjected to psychosurgery, insulin coma therapy, and involuntary sterilization.
I know what the last one is. What are the first two?
I did not look up psychosurgery, so let's look that up.
Psychosurgery? Wonder if it's like a lobotomy, but like further in the brain.
So it's also called neurosurgery for mental disorder, and it's a neurosurgical treatment of mental disorders. So it's been a controversial medical field. It began in the 1880s.
Oh.
So
I feel like it's kind of like a lobotomy.
Not good.
But you open up the brain instead of just go through the eye.
Maybe. I don't know. But I do have insulin coma therapy. So this is where patients were deliberately put into a low blood sugar coma. It was meant to allow the brain to reset and should have lasted 1 to 4 hours. But there were times when the patients never pulled out of these comas.
It is crazy for how long we really thought, well, if we just turn it off and turn it back on again, it'll reset itself.
I mean, it does work with computers, but computers weren't really a thing back then.
Right. And I'm like, there's definitely things you can do to reset some things.
Like sleep.
Yeah. But
that's a good one.
Not so much that you're going to literally change the brain chemistry someone's head.
Oof. But the hospital did offer their patient services and treatments that were on par with what other facilities in other parts of the country were facing. So a lot of these treatments were kind of similar.
Yeah.
But some of the other services included custodial care and work-based therapies. This is where patients were paid token wages to assist with operations within the hospital. So
that
cooking, cleaning.
That is useful.
That is useful.
That is a good therapy.
Bad press and low staff morale still haunted the facility. The Public Welfare and Humane Institutions Committee met with the Board of Trustees to discuss how to handle any accident reports that were occurring at the hospital, sort of with the whole mysterious deaths thing.
And was this still in like the 40s and 50s?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Because in 1941 alone, there were 86 deaths at the hospital. Some were from old age, some were from illnesses, but there were others from suicide, accidents, and dark causes.
Dark causes?
Mm-hmm.
What's a dark cause?
I don't know. That's where that mystery falls in. The governor, James L. McConaughey.
Like Matthew McConaughey?
I think so.
Okay.
McConaughey. Forbade Fairfield's coroner from releasing any more information to the press about these accidents, but also instructed the hospital to record accidents that could cause death. So I guess...
Cover it up, but not so much that it's obvious for covering something up.
Right. So in the first 2 weeks, 10 incidents were reported. Then the Board of Trustees were informed that the patients had been put into mass seclusion, all in one room, due to low staffing issues. Because of this, some patients starved because there were no staff there to assist them. By the end of the 1940s, conditions were improving slightly, and more press came to the facility in the 1950s when Man to Man, a film for psychology students, was shot on the grounds in 1954. But the 1950s still weren't good, because at this point, the hospital was averaging 346 deaths per year. That's basically one person dying every single day.
Oh my God.
Yes. It's like really bad.
Yeah. That's more than half their patients die in a year if they have... Oh, wait, they have more than 500. Sorry.
Oh, in like just a couple bullets, I'll get to how many patients we have.
Okay.
In 1954, more bad news and press surrounded the facility when former psychiatric aide Chuck Hall wrote an expose about the neglect and brutality that he faced while he was at Fairfield. So that he saw while he was working.
Yeah.
In response to this, the hospital tried to make some architectural changes and began promoting a more welcoming, home-like atmosphere. Parts of the hospital were devoted to entertainment for the patients. So Plymouth Hall housed a chapel, theater, gymnasium, bowling alley, and different workshops, all of which were available to the patients to make a home-like atmosphere. These changes didn't solve the overcrowding problem.
I was just about to say, did they get more rooms?
Nope.
Or did they just make more common spaces that they're going to have to sleep in anyway?
So by the late 1960s, the hospital had over 4,000 patients.
Holy shit.
With a capacity of 500, 50 nurses, 20 doctors, and 100 other employees. So those were groundskeepers, things like that. Oh, are you going to see how many patients per doctor?
Per nurse.
Okay, so 50 nurses, 4,000 patients.
Okay. I feel like that's too low of a number. 80? 80 times 50, 4,000. Yeah.
Oh, so 80 patients per one nurse.
That's true. That's right. Yeah.
So that's awful. And then 4,000 patients and 20 doctors.
So each nurse has 80 patients. Each doctor has 200 patients.
Good.
And that doesn't even mean that they're the same people.
Oh my God. I literally... But these weren't great ratios. Ratios.
I'm just so in tune with the story, man.
So yeah, that meant that it was an average of 200 patients to one doctor and 80 to one nurse.
Cool. So, we just checked my math.
And we did the math right. So we're good. And with the overcrowding and lack of staff, daily routines of medication administering became chaotic. So some people would get their medicine way, way, way later than they should have. Then, the deinstitutionalization movement of the 1970s and 80s resulted in many psychiatric hospitals closing their doors. Fairfield tried to make it work, though, because by the 80s, patients were assigned to their own doctor and social worker, and they shifted their focus. It had once been that Fairfield was the place where a person would just be forever. Like, you go here, you're going to die here. But soon there was a focus on getting the patient ready to transition back to the real world.
So did their numbers, drastically drop at this time?
Well, we don't really have the ability to go over it that much. I'll get to it.
Okay.
So that didn't do what it was intended. And the deinstitutionalization movement was still going to affect Fairfield. So they tried to pivot into a drug and alcohol program.
I have to tell you something so funny. So I hear this commotion out in the hallway, and it sounds like someone's carrying something heavy. And I look out my people and I can tell that someone is carrying what looks like a couch up the stairs. And so I walk away from the door and I'm like, Pivot? I did not open my door and shout that at them.
Like, that would have been hysterical. Or you could have just shouted it from inside. They wouldn't have known what door it was coming from.
There's not enough apartments. There's not enough apartments in my building for it to be that discreet.
Oh my God. So they tried to pivot into a drug and alcohol program, but even that didn't help them. After 64 years of operation, on December 8th, 1995, so still quite after the 80s, Fairfield Hills closed its doors. All of the patients were transferred to the Connecticut Valley Hospital in Middletown, Connecticut.
I'm not going to lie. For a couple seconds there, I forgot that we were talking about this place because I'm assuming we're going to get to being haunted.
Yes.
And so I'm just like, I'm like, oh my God, we're going to hear all the drama of this hospital. This is great.
Ugh, not any more drama.
And I was like, oh my God, what if it's still around? And then that's when I remembered, no, because then it can't be haunted.
I mean, I could just talk about how scary the hospital was.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I forgot what we were focusing on.
Yeah, no. That the building has long since closed. Not every resident has left. Now again to the haunted stuff.
Yeah.
So I read about the stone tape theory. So it states that locations, especially those made of stone, can physically hold events and like hold the energy of those events, and that others can pick up on these events, leading to hauntings. Isn't that cool? What is your skepticism?
I get the stones. What do you mean by others can pick up on it?
Like when people come into that facility, like into that place, they can feel the hauntings. They can feel the energy that those events held.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that would naturally make something haunted.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And like if something had like if something really horrible happened, you can feel the heaviness and the sadness, like that kind of thing.
That's pretty typical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it makes sense.
The way I heard it was like, oh, these things are held in these stones, and then people these people take these stones.
I'm going to take this stone. No.
And I was just like, this is not
quite.
This can't be true.
It's just called the stone tape theory.
Okay.
Yeah, they're not physically holding events. They're like holding the
Sorry,
emotions.
I take things pretty literally, okay?
Shadow figures have been spotted roaming the grounds. There have been people dressed in white seen around, believed to be the spirits of former employees and patients.
One day I really hope that someone says the lady in pink.
I've heard of the lady in white, red, and brown. Oh, and green.
And gray.
And gray.
Did you say blue already?
No.
I heard blue.
Oh.
Like a light gray blue.
Oh.
But they don't say the lady in blue. They just say she was wearing blue.
Hmm.
But I want like the lady in pink.
Lady in hot pink.
Mm-hmm.
People have also reported seeing a, quote, young, small-figured woman dressed in white, staring through the windows of the condemned buildings with a glowing light behind her.
Interesting.
The town of Newtown did a partial refurbishment of the property, and during that refurbishment, a series of tunnels were found. In 2009, the tunnels were sealed and destroyed by the town.
Damn.
But while in operation, the tunnels had once been used to transport patients between treatments and laboratories, confinement rooms, operating rooms, and even to the morgue.
Yeah, I mean, you can't take those fuckers outside.
I mean, they were all in their enclosed property, but it was like a quicker way to get between buildings, and it also helped if the facility, like if it was raining and the weather was really bad. They were what connected the whole facility and were used quite a bit by patients and employees. Even while in use, employees would talk about how eerie and scary the tunnels were, and that is before the building had closed down even.
I don't think I've ever met a tunnel that's not scary. Unless it's like in an aquarium.
Oh, yeah.
And even then, I'm a little nervous because I'm like, if this breaks, we're all
dead.
screwed.
But then there's nothing you can do about it, so you just gotta push through and enjoy it.
Okay.
They are also the most frequently cited locations for paranormal activity.
I thought they were closed.
The town closed them in 2009. Before the town closed them, people would break in to explore the tunnels.
Whoa.
Yes. Shadow figures are a common sight in these underground tunnels. They are seen around corners and have been described as crouching. Mysterious footsteps, unexplained noises, and even disembodied voices have been reported in the tunnels. One group that went said that they were walking in the tunnels when they started to hear footsteps. They all stopped, and it sounded like the footsteps were coming from right in front of them. Then suddenly, it sounded as if the footsteps were running straight at them.
There's two things in this world that you're never, no matter how much you beg, are going to get me to do, and it's a tunnel and a bridge.
Okay. I can accept those.
Because those freak me out during daytime. So
even at nighttime, even worse.
Correct.
Whispers and voices were also heard by the group. There have been sounds of the walls being scratched and the rustling of medical equipment. Cold air, even in the middle of summer, fills the corridors as well. The electroshock therapy room is also one of the rooms where a lot of paranormal activity is experienced. Reports include the sound of machinery and agonized screams.
I just like my thing that like makes me is like the
drill noise.
Yeah.
Yeah. There is also a very strong feeling and deep sensation of sadness in the room. But these obviously aren't the only two places that have activity. All over the facility, doors will slam on their own, usually a cell door on the 3rd floor. Areas that have no power will somehow have flickering lights, and objects have been seen moving on their own. Visitors have reported hearing odd noises, screams, and moans. There are the sounds of wailing and anguish, always coming from an indiscernible direction. People have reported hearing disembodied footsteps and voices following them as they move through the hospital.
Remind me what disembodied means again.
There's no body with it.
So if you hear disembodied footsteps, you're hearing footsteps even though you don't see anything?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, same with voices. You hear the disembodied voice because there's no body with it, so you're hearing the voice, but you're not seeing where it's coming from.
So are those voices like meaning when you hear it, it sounds like it should be really close to you, but you don't see anything there?
Potentially, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking like if it's far away, how do you know it's disembodied? You can't fucking see.
Yeah.
There might be a body.
That's a good question. There might be a body. There is an intense feeling of dread and a feeling of being watched when in the hospital. There is also an undeniable feeling of unease and a very heavy feeling. Visitors have also reported feeling very sick. These feelings are felt the most in areas where patients were restrained or where more invasive treatments took place. But the feelings do dissipate, but only when you are completely off of the hospital grounds. Cold spots are also a commonly reported feeling as well. So today, the town of Newtown purchased the property, like I said, in 2004. Then they started doing all of their conversions. They're refurbishing in 2009. It began converting some of the buildings for administrative use, and as of 2017, it was being transformed into a civic and cultural center. The town of Newtown and other organizations occupy a few of the buildings, which are now known as the Newtown Municipal Center. For example, Bridgeport Hall, which had once contained the food services for Fairfield Hills, now serves as the offices of the town to include the city's tax office, the Board of Education, planning and zoning departments, and other functions. But most of the areas of the Holt Hospital have remained abandoned behind fencing, with new areas opening on the campus, to include a brewery called the Newsylum.
That's terrible.
The 1996 film Sleepers filmed at the hospital, and an episode of MTV's Fear also filmed here due to its history and haunted aesthetic. I have no idea what Fear was, so I looked it up. So, quote,
not Fear Factor.
No, Fear. Fear is an American paranormal reality television series that originally aired from 2000 to 2002 on MTV. The program follows a group of contestants who are left in an allegedly haunted location and led on a series of dares over 2 nights to explore the location and determine whether it is haunted.
I would watch that.
It's all on YouTube.
Nice.
I did not watch this episode because I didn't have the time last night, but I plan to watch it soon because it sounds so fun.
That I would watch. I could not do Fear Factor because it made me nauseous. I'm like,
we loved Fear Factor.
I know. I'm aware.
Fear is not a factor for you.
You guys always had the shows. There was a different one all the time.
Survivor.
That was one. What was the other one? There's the Graham Norton show, which honestly was fucking hilarious.
Mom loves that. Yeah.
I also love that.
Yeah.
My dad is also obsessed with that show.
Speak words.
We'll talk off air.
Okay. Ed and Lorraine Warren also appeared in this episode of Fear at this hospital.
Well, they're close by.
Yeah, exactly, actually.
They were in town.
Yeah. This building, especially the abandoned parts, are illegal to enter. You will be charged with trespassing, as there are police who patrol the area and aren't afraid to give trespassers a $92 fine. Especially every Halloween, as there are at least 4 police squad cars patrolling the area looking for people trespassing, trying to get a scare.
You can't get a scare on a cliche night. You got to go on.
Maybe that's the most scary night.
Well, you got to go on an off season.
Well, that's like Bunnyman Bridge. It's always super, super packed on Halloween.
Right.
Because that's the only time Bunnyman is said to appear.
I think that is said because he appears all the time, all under the other 364 days a year, and everyone just doesn't try it out and goes on that day. And he's like, ha ha ha, suckers.
It was like that one cemetery I covered where the devil's supposed to visit on like the spring equinox, like the random day in March.
Telling you.
But yeah, State Hospital. I think you can do tours there. Still would not. Those things can't, like the hospitals and stuff, because of how bad they were, they actually are kind of creepy because of all the negative emotions and stuff that's there.
Hospitals with live humans freak me out anyway. So I can't imagine going to one that has nothing.
With just all the dead there.
Hospitals make me nauseous.
What else makes you nauseous, Mackenzie?
Anything that has to do with bodily function not functioning properly.
So you would not be a nurse?
No.
Mm-mm.
No, I would be good at the taking care of part. I'd be terrible at like the actual medical attention. Exactly. I'd be like, that sucks. Unless you're like under the age of 10, I'm useless if you're bleeding.
Yeah.
So
I have a coworker who passes out if she sees blood.
I don't get like that unless it's my own blood.
Interesting. It's her own blood, someone else's blood, whatever it is, blood. She's a woman, so she's able to deal with that.
Right.
But
even then, I can normally deal with that. But then when it's like you know what I'm talking about?
Yep. Everyone else who gets periods knows exactly what you're talking
when
about.
When that happens, I'm very close to throwing up. Like I just, I can't. I can't. Anything that needs to stay inside your body should stay there. So that's my motto. Like love you, mom. But every surgery she had, I never changed her bandages. Aww. And I was like, I cannot do that.
Or I will throw up on them, and that's
correct.
Not good.
It'll freak me the fuck out.
Yeah, I get that.
I'm not good at that. I find a lot of things icky. A lot of things that I say I'm afraid of, I find icky.
Yeah.
So.
And that's one of them.
Fear factor. No. Because they literally do all the things I could never do. Eat something like the shit they eat.
Oh, yeah.
They do height shit. Well, that's out.
Yeah.
I would be frozen, literally. And then have shit crawl on you. Absolutely the fuck not.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that show is the reason that I started to have the fear that in the night I had to have my ear that was up covered, because if I didn't, a spider was going to fall in my ear and out of my mouth.
Would you rather be in a room with 100 tarantulas or a dog-sized spider? And you have to get out of the room, but you have to pass all of these to get out of the room.
What kind of dog are we talking about?
It's like a Roy, like a 60
That's a huge dog.
I know. So a Roy-sized spider.
I think either way I'm passing out.
Or 100 tarantulas.
I think I would probably do 100.
That's what I would choose.
Because I think I would feel like I could beat that.
Right.
Versus a really big thing.
Because they're fast, but they're small. So it's going to take them a little bit of time to get to me.
Eventually.
A big-ass spider, you can get to me in like 2 steps.
Right. Like I could eventually talk myself into the fact that I am bigger than them and they are more afraid of me than I am of them.
Yeah. But a dog-sized spider?
I could never do that.
Yeah,
no.
Fear is not a factor for us.
Fear is always a factor. Fear is 100% a factor.
All right, what story do you have tonight?
The story is intriguing and a little sad.
Naturally, okay.
Just little.
Okay.
This mystery is 135 years old, and unless we come up with some kind of super science technology, it's likely to remain a mystery forever.
Ugh, one of those.
The Leatherman traveled on a regular circuit between Connecticut and New York from roughly 1857 to 1889. There has been much speculation on the identity of the man, but no one knows for sure who he is, where he came from, or why he started walking this loop in the first place.
Oh, he walked this loop?
Oh, yeah.
From where to where again?
Connecticut into New York.
Oh.
Yeah.
Still.
We don't have a map, but they're very close to each
other.
Are.
But still walking.
No, I know. It's still crazy. Around the time of the Civil War, before, during, and after, harmless and displaced wanderers were roaming the countryside, usually looking for work on different farms or maybe a meal or a place in the barn to sleep. Throughout this time, the residents of towns in western Connecticut and eastern New York became accustomed to seeing a man dressed head to toe in homemade leather clothing, which earned him his namesake,
right?
The Leatherman.
Yeah.
The entire attire is said to have weighed 60 pounds, and he would wear it in all weather and all temperatures.
I bet it smelled awful.
Side note, John Scott Bennett made a great YouTube doc about the Leatherman, and he gives a lot more historical background than I'm going to.
Mm-hmm.
I included if it's pertinent to the story, but I feel like the way that he explains it, or like includes the historical context, kind of makes you understand the story a little bit better, but it's not necessarily needed to understand the story.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yep.
Just gives you a little background knowledge that might help you think a little bit more critically, but it's not needed to like understand the gist.
Gotcha.
But I do highly recommend going to watch it because he does a really good job. The Leatherman walked a constant loop of 365 miles that he repeated again and again. He would arrive like clockwork in the 40 towns along his route every 34 days. It is said that he walked more than 100,000 miles between 1857, 58-ish to 1889.
Jeez.
They're not really sure when he officially started.
Yeah.
He was so consistent, historian Jim Reisler described in his book, Walk of Ages, quote, so punctual were his habits that the people who slipped him handouts and spare change could practically set their watches by him.
Wow.
If he typically stopped at a house at 10 a.m. or p.m., then he would be there around 10 a.m. or p.m. 34 days later, give or take 5 minutes, but always within the half hour.
Jeez.
Gradually, through research of reporters and word of mouth, the Leatherman's route was mapped. So while there's no start, mostly because it's a loop,
right?
I'm just going to start with Connecticut.
Makes sense, yes.
So the Leatherman would travel through Danbury towards Waterbury.
Who knows? Everything up north, they don't pronounce anything the way that it's spelled.
Danbury.
So anything you say will be fine.
Okay. Waterbury. And then follow the towns that were along the Connecticut River to the Long Island Sound. He would travel through New Haven and Bridgeport as he headed toward New York State, and then he would travel north from White Plains toward Pound Ridge Reservation in Cross River, New York, and other towns along the Hudson. It was cool because when I was looking this up, like different newspapers from different towns had
that's cool.
him as like their legend.
Yeah.
Even though he went to all these different places. So it was kind of cool.
That is cool.
Yeah. He would go through Somers, Brewater, and North Salem, New York before entering back into Connecticut and repeating the loop again. He walked about 240 miles through Connecticut and about 125 miles through New York. The Leatherman's leather outfit and belongings consisted of a leather bag and a cane. He wore a leather hat with a visor, a pair of leather pants held up by leather suspenders, and a long leather coat. And in the winter months, he would wear a scarf under his coat. I don't know if it was leather. I don't know. It didn't say. It just said a scarf. His whole outfit was patched together with leather lacing and a rather messy workmanship. The Leatherman wore wooden clog-type shoes similar to the ones worn by peasants in maybe northern France or Belgium. They had wooden soles and leather tops. His attire is what would make him more memorable than any other vagabonds, which is a person who wanders from place to place without a fixed home in the area. Some said they could hear the leather creak when he walked by, and others said that they could smell him coming.
Ew.
His ritualistically punctual traveling habits and his specific choice in clothing led the Leatherman to notoriety, something he had no desire to become.
That was so smooth.
Thank
so
you.
beautiful.
A.D. Eastwood of Bristol, Connecticut recalled many years later that the first time he saw the Leatherman was in 1856. At this point, the Leatherman had not acquired his full leather suit and had more traditional clothes with patches of leather on his knees, shoulders, elbows, and his hindquarters.
Interesting.
He did have his hat, and he still carried a leather bag. At this point, he was just another wanderer of the streets of New England. The Leatherman was first mentioned in the press on August 26, 1869, in the Portchester Journal. Robinson Crusoe reported, quote, a Frenchman, aged about 35 years, dressed entirely in leather, stripped from old bootlegs, and carries a leather pack on his back and a tin pail in his hand, continually travels about the country, coming from the same direction and passing through the fields at a certain point. Crusoe goes on to say that he followed the stranger out of curiosity, weird, and found that he was living in a rock shelter in the woods.
Oh.
He had water in a well-tilled, like as in well as in good, not well as in water well.
Okay.
Tilled garden with bushes and poles that had been kept in good shape. Crusoe concluded the short article with, quote, we could but wish this poor creature success in his loneliness.
Oh,
I know.
jeez.
That is going to be a little sad.
Maybe that's what he wanted, though.
Oh, he did.
You know, some people just enjoy that solitary lifestyle.
100%. He was not a people person.
Yeah.
The Leatherman preferred to keep to himself.
Okay, there we go.
And would regularly take shelter in caves or rock shelters that he had discovered along his route. He kept his cave very neat with a pine bough or leaf bed and a fresh supply of chopped wood ready for his next visit. The Leatherman was known to eat whole loaves of bread and boxes of crackers all in one sitting.
Oh.
He absolutely loved coffee. Same.
Good. Mm-hmm.
And his only vice seemed to be an affinity for tobacco.
Oh.
He would pick up cigar butts along his way and reassemble the leftover tobacco for later use.
I mean,
resourceful.
Smart. Yeah, resourceful.
And he never turned away an offer from townsfolk for fresh tobacco and or a cigar. He would craft together pipes to smoke on his journey or later in his makeshift shelter. Despite his gruff appearance and wardrobe, locals quickly determined that the Leatherman was harmless and rather gentle. Under all his garb, he was only 5'7" and around 140 to 170 pounds.
Jeez.
He would stop by local farmhouses looking for food, and if he was turned away, he wouldn't return to that location again. He never became violent when he was denied or rejected. If he was accepted, he would express gratitude in a word or two of broken English and be on his way.
Oh.
The Leatherman rarely spoke, using only monosyllables or grunts and gestures. He spoke some broken English and was apparently fluent in French. I don't know how they knew he was fluent if he's only saying one word, but...
I mean, maybe he started speaking in French and someone was like, oh, that's French.
Well, he did not do that. He did not, speak to people at all.
Oh.
So that's why I think they only say French because he had a prayer book that was in French.
Oh.
So I think they mostly assumed and not heard it.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He would knock on the door with his cane, and when, or if, the door opened, he would usually point to his mouth and grunt.
Oh.
No one ever knew how he decided on the places he would stop at, but it was assumed that he decided to stop whenever he became hungry. When he returned, he would likely stop at the homes he knew had served him the time before. He became such a regular figure that locals often looked forward to his visits.
Oh.
And housewives would bake extra bread for his arrival. In A History of the Town of Louisboro, an anecdote from Miss M. Louise Boutin about the Leatherman recalled, quote, came around once a year, always to the east side of the house. He would knock on the leader drain pipe. Mother would give him coffee and some sandwiches. He would say, thank you so much, lady, but never look at you. He was dressed all in brown leather, and no one was afraid of him. Another woman recalled a time when the Leatherman had come to town around Christmas when she was 14 years old. She had baked 2 cakes and decided to give one to the Leatherman.
Aww.
She said he only said one word, fish, which she assumed was thanks in his native language. It's not French, so I don't know what that is. A practice began in towns along Leatherman's route. As soon as he entered town, citizens would take note of everything he did. What time he entered the town, the homes he visited, the food he ate, and drinks he drank, and any sort of conversation he might have had, no matter how brief. This was collected and reported in local newspapers, which would create more excitement for his next visits. For example, although it was never known how the Leatherman came into his money, one local store reportedly kept a record of a usual resupply order, which was always paid for before the Leatherman moved on.
Aww.
The order was, quote, 1 loaf of bread, can of sardines, 1 pound of fancy crackers, I don't know what those are, a pie, 2 quarts of coffee, 1 gill of brandy, and a bottle of beer. In 1885, the Hartford Globe published a chart of his arrival times and the dates. So, for example, it would be like Tuesday, January 8th, arrived at 2:20.
Mm-hmm.
And then you would see just 34, 34, 34, because literally every 34 days.
Jeez, that's wild.
And so the next 34 days, Monday, February 11th, 2:35.
Mm-hmm.
34 days later. And when you're looking at the times, it's like anywhere between 2 and 2:30.
Jeez.
Maybe 3, but most of the time it's like 1:55, 1:15, or 2:15, like that kind of thing.
That's weird.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? Obviously, this kind of reporting is also what led to this discovery of his regular route. It's like the way, at least it was described, it kind of sounded like these people, not all of them, kind of adopted him in a way.
Right.
And like reporting about where he was, what he did, was almost like a way of them keeping tabs on him.
Right.
So like the town's adopted child. Unfortunately, it is all too common that fame comes with positive and negative attention. Although I think the Leatherman thought that any kind of attention from people was bad attention.
Yeah.
Children and teenagers in towns would dare one another to either make fun of the Leatherman or prove themselves brave enough to follow him to his cave.
Don't do that.
Adults, both men and women, and reporters would show up at his cave and then publish his location in the local papers.
That's mean.
In 1884, the Middletown Constitution, Middletown, reported, quote, the Leatherman has his abode in a cave in Westbrook, about 2 miles from the center. When not on his travels, he repairs to the cave, dreams and snores there, reads newspapers, and cooks his victuals. The circumstances caused him to abandon some shelters he had previously used, and in some cases he would change his route altogether if he needed to avoid a certain area. In Forestville, Connecticut, a group of young men tried to force the Leatherman to drink liquor so that he might be more inclined to share details of his past. When he refused, the men threw him into a local horse trough and continued harassing him until the Leatherman left town.
That's so mean.
Supposedly crying as he walked away.
Oh, stop.
I know.
I hope those men fall into a horse trough.
I don't end so sad, if that makes you feel better.
Okay.
Kind of.
Kind of.
Well, I wouldn't say it ends sad. It just ends on like a cliffhanger.
Okay.
Because remember,
it's an unsolved mystery. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, he's an unsolved man.
Man mystery.
Man mystery.
A similar incident happened in New Haven when a drunk crowd had hoisted the Leatherman into the air while liquor was forced down his throat.
Oh my God.
I just watched a CSI episode where that made someone die.
Well, yeah, I can assume that could do that.
That didn't do it to him, but you can't do that. Someone might die. The Leatherman quickly walked away, desperately wanting to be left alone.
Oh.
In the late 1870s, Connecticut and New York began passing tramp laws to address the increased homeless population. Section 1 of the law reads, quote, every tramp shall be punished by imprisonment in the state prison not more than 1 year. Even better, Section 2 says, quote, all transient persons who rove about from place to place begging, and all vagrants living without labor or visible means of support, who stroll over the country without lawful occasion, shall be held to be tramps within the meaning of this act. So basically, if you're found like wandering around, like you're going to get arrested.
Right.
Doesn't seem like they improved these laws.
No.
By any means.
I wouldn't think so.
But there you go. However, these laws didn't stop the Leatherman from living his nomadic lifestyle. He had become so well known that people along his route never reported him to the authorities.
Good.
Yeah. And it's interesting because you really see how, like, when you hear about history, you really see how little we change as society.
Mm-hmm.
Because just as these were being passed, there was a lot of people who didn't agree with them.
Right.
All in the same area. You know, and this is Connecticut and New York. There was one article from the time that was saying that everyone should get a shotgun so that if one shows up, you can just shoot him. And that's in fucking New York and Connecticut.
I mean, that's still the thoughts people have.
I know.
Yeah.
You know, but I mean in sense of like, you know, it's not when like the South or something like we typically think of. Like that time, there's people from both walks of life. And I was like, that's not nice.
No, that's not nice.
Members of the community that regularly helped the Leatherman and felt his treatment was unfair and abusive quickly made their thoughts heard. The citizens in Forestville had shamed the young men who had targeted the Leatherman.
Good.
They felt the strange and harmless wanderer should be protected by all means from unkind treatment.
Good.
10 different Connecticut towns passed local ordinances to specifically exempt the Leatherman from the state's anti-vagrancy tramp laws that had been passed in 1879. I know. Some schools let the best student go outside to give him food when he passed by on Leatherman Day.
That's so cute.
Other schools would let students out from class early whenever the Leatherman came to town so that they didn't miss his visit.
I love that.
And like there was definitely in the video too, he gives a lot of like reports from, I'm assuming newspapers and stuff of people who had interacted with him like at the time. And there were like two or three accounts of like young girls who were like, oh yeah, I saw him and we brought him like a glass of milk. And he, you know, said, thank you so much. And then went on his way.
Yeah.
Like these little girls are like, no, he's fine. He's not scary.
Right.
Because he doesn't do anything to be scary. It's crazy what happens when you get to know someone's true character and then you can make an actual judgment of them based on not what just they look like. Weird. As it does to everyone, time began to catch up with the Leatherman. In the last couple years of his life, the people in town began to notice his sickly appearance and that he was arriving to towns later than his typical time.
No.
One paper reported in September of 1888, quote, the Leatherman passed through here Sunday afternoon at about 4:30, 2 days behind time. He's looking bad and his lip is about eaten away by cancer. So at some point, probably due to the tobacco use,
oh yeah,
he had developed mouth cancer and a large growth on his lip. It was bad.
Leatherman.
His condition obviously continued to worsen because he refused any help.
Right.
And chose to keep to his routine instead. The Connecticut Humane Society had him arrested and hospitalized in December of 1888 with the hope of attending to his condition in a clean and professional environment. It was the only time he was ever arrested.
Right, because they're trying to help him.
Yeah, and like they even made sure like the townspeople were like, yeah, like that was a good idea. And like they even looked into like the legality of it. And they're like, yeah, no, that was okay because of whatever it is that they said.
Right.
And this was also the only time that he became like violent.
Oh, because he didn't want to be there.
He didn't want to be there. And so when they tried to detain him, he obviously resisted. And I think he tried to hit someone with his cane. They were able to get him admitted into a physician's care. After he was examined, a couple of sources said that the diagnosis was, quote, of sane except for an emotional affliction.
Okay.
He demanded to be released. And the nurses and doctors either couldn't or wouldn't stop him, and he left the hospital to continue on his loop.
Aww.
So thankfully he didn't, despite it being like Connecticut and New York in the winter, he never lost any fingers or digits to frostbite.
Yeah, I guess I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. Some said that like he had maybe spots on his face, but it's hard to know if that was from the cancer or not because there were a lot of reports like the girl who gave him the milk, she said a lot of it fell out of his mouth because the cancer had eaten away.
Oh my God.
At his face.
That's so sad.
Yeah. So I don't know if that was necessarily frostbite was cancer.
Right.
He also survived the Great Blizzard of 1888.
Oh my God.
Which was crazy. People really thought like, no way. And a few days later, showed up.
I mean, if he's in his cave for some of it.
That's where he was.
He's got like a roaring fire going.
Yeah, he was in his cave and he, I don't know, did something with avoiding roads or something like that, or made it around roads. Because the blizzard of 1888 had snow in some areas almost up to 5 feet.
God.
Yeah, it's bad. That's why it's the Great Blizzard.
Right, yeah.
Anything with great in front of it
is pretty big.
It's pretty big. However, by this time, he was having trouble swallowing his food unless it was dipped in coffee. But even then, it is said that it would hurt so badly that tears would run down his face.
Oh my God.
I said it was a little sad. On March 24th, 1889, the Leatherman's body was found in the Sawmill Woods Cave in Mount Pleasant, New York. The medical examiner determined that the Leatherman had been dead for 3 to 4 days prior to his body being discovered. And the only reason why it was because people were being nosy and wanted to go check out his cave.
I mean, I guess it's good.
Yes, he did. Absolutely. The cause of death was blood poisoning due to cancer. Blood poisoning. God, that sounds horrendous.
Yeah, it does.
He was laid to rest at Sparta Cemetery along Route 9 in nearby Ossing, New York, which apparently used to be called Sing Sing, New York.
Oh, cute.
But I think the way they rearranged some of the letters, it's now Ossining. For 60 years, his grave was marked by a single metal pipe, but in the 1950s, he was given a proper gravestone. It was engraved with, quote, final resting place of Jules Bourgelat of Lyons, France, the Leatherman who regularly walked 365-mile route through Westchester and Connecticut from the Connecticut River to the Hudson, living in caves in these years, 1859 to 1889. Was Jules Bourgelat really the identity of the Leatherman? According to archaeologist Stephen R. Cooper, quote, he rarely spoke, and it was reported to be mostly grunts and little French.
Mm-hmm.
When asked anything about his life and who he was, he would respond with maybe a word or two or just refuse to talk altogether, which, of course, his silence only led to more speculation.
Oh, absolutely.
The name Jules Bourgelat was originally reported in an 1884 article in the Waterbury Daily American, and they claimed to have supposedly interviewed the Leatherman. However, this article was retracted the day after the Leatherman's death. Like, multiple times.
Okay.
It was basically like, I got false information.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not true.
Huh.
My bad. 5 years later.
Yeah.
And future historians did also confirm that it was false.
Okay.
The story of Jules Bourgelat, I know I'm not saying that the same, but that's okay, was that he was a young man with a promising career in a leather factory where he was engaged to the factory owner's daughter.
Naturally.
In another version of this myth, Jules is the son of a woodcarver, or maybe he's a woodcarver himself, who fell in love with the daughter of a rich man who made his fortune in leather.
Okay.
And of course, he wants to marry her, but instead he's given the job at her father's factory. And if he's successful in leather goods, then he would be successful in marriage. Unfortunately, Jules made a bad investment and completely ruined the business. Or he might have accidentally tipped over a lantern late one night and burnt the factory down.
Oh, no.
Or possibly his fiance's home got burned down and it killed her.
Oh, literally anything that happened was sad.
Yeah. But in that last version, Jules himself was the wealthy one who fell in love with someone in a lower economic class and I guess suspected that his parents had murdered his love.
Oh my God.
There was also one that said something too about him staying in like a asylum for a little bit. Whatever ends up happening.
Fairfield Hills?
Maybe. No, because he was in France.
Oh, right. He's in France at this time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Either way, he was shamed into fleeing France for America, where he became Leatherman.
Okay.
Some believe it was sort of this self-inflicted physical hardship that he was performing as like a penance for the rest of his life because of what happened in France.
Okay.
Maybe. Another story identified the Leatherman as a French shoemaker named Rudolph Mossy. In a 1984 New York Times article, they reported that Mossy supposedly spoke to a reporter who claimed to have interviewed him in French. I could not access the actual article itself, so it's like this is secondhand from another article.
Right.
According to the reporter, Mossy was a French cobbler whose wife ran away to America with his friend. According to the New York Times article, quote, Mossy sold his business and sailed to the United States, where after 3 years, he learned his wife was living in Connecticut. Unfortunately, it was too late, and by the time Mossy tracked down his former friend, his wife had died.
Aww.
He was told that she lived in many parts of the state, so he walked from town to town, tracing her ghostly footsteps.
Oh.
Also not true.
Oh. I liked that one.
Or at least can't be confirmed.
Okay.
But we're pretty sure not true.
Yeah.
Dan DeLuca wrote a book about the Leatherman in 2008 and has studied the man and the legend for decades. He told NPR in 2011 that the stories reported in the newspapers were not true. In his book, DeLuca said his best guess was that the Leatherman was French or of French-Canadian descent with possible Native American ancestry.
Oh, okay.
A French prayer book was found in his possession upon his death, and there are reports of him being fluent in French, or at least saying words in French.
Mm-hmm.
Some had even said that the Leatherman had an extensive knowledge of Native American lore, which had aided him in living in nature every day.
Oh, interesting.
At the various cave sites, he had kept an urban vegetable garden, like I said earlier.
Mm-hmm.
He also created running streams, which gave him fresh water.
Nice.
And many believed that Leatherman was also maybe a devout Catholic because he refused meat on Fridays and would only eat fish.
We have a Catholic listener who told us we could ask her any questions.
That I do know.
So,
because you're supposed to, okay. Yeah, you're supposed to do that during Lent.
Oh, well, then we have it confirmed, but we know you're there.
Yeah. Double check us. If we're right, let us know, because we love to be right. When he had been hospitalized in 1888, his records show the name Zacharias Bouvelet. And it was assumed that he was the one who had told the staff this name because they would not have come up with something like this.
Right.
But it's not really known why this name is never really used and it's rarely reported about.
Mm-hmm.
Other possible names that were reported were Isaac or Isaac, but none of these claims could ever be corroborated. Close enough. In conclusion, the Leatherman's gravesite was exhumed in 2011 to relocate the remains and test them for DNA.
Interesting.
They wanted to move the location to a different spot in the cemetery that was just further away from the road.
Mm-hmm.
Safety reasons.
Yeah.
However, the plan to take the DNA became a little bit of a controversy at the time.
Why?
Don Johnson is a middle school history teacher in North Haven, Connecticut, who teaches his students about the Leatherman, which, awesome.
Yeah.
He is also the creator of the website Leave the Leatherman Alone.
Leave Brittany alone.
Pretty much. Johnson said that the Leatherman was intensely private, spending, quote, 30 years, 100,000 miles, never telling anybody who he was. That legacy to me should speak to us today as, do we want to respect him and memorialize him properly? Then leave him alone, leave his bones alone.
Okay, I get it. But also at the same time, I'm too curious to not know.
Correct. Connecticut State archaeologist Nick Bellatoni worked on the gravesite and would carefully scrape away at whatever with his teeny tiny small tool. However, it was discovered that Leatherman's remains had decomposed into the dirt.
Oh.
Possibly due to acidic soil, but there was nothing there except for some rusty nails and animal bones.
Oh.
No traces were left behind.
Was he buried in his leather?
I don't know. It was 130 some odd years ago.
Well, I just wonder if that is like also dissolved or whatever.
I definitely don't think they put him in a box of any kind.
Mm-hmm.
Or, I mean, maybe they did and it just deteriorated away.
Right.
But, I mean, for the first 60 years, it was just a pipe that identified him. So I think they just put him in the dirt.
Probably.
Yeah. But no leather. Or at least not. There was nothing there. It was just a pile of dirt.
Mm-hmm.
I got a pile of dirt. So within the same cemetery, they held a funeral for the Leatherman before they reburied him with some of the dirt that he believed to decompose in.
Yeah.
And the rusty nails. His grave is now marked by a large headstone that just simply says, the Leatherman. And his true identity is forever a mystery.
Oh my gosh.
And that is the Leatherman of Connecticut.
Interesting.
It's like a live legend.
Yeah. Cool.
Everyone, again, it's like, he's real, but no one knows who he is.
Yeah.
So his identity is the legend.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Would you want to exhume his bones? Well, if there had been bones there, would you have wanted to exhume them?
100%.
Yeah. I would want to know who it was too.
Yeah. Especially, I'm like, you're already moving them anyway.
Right. Just tingle them off the top.
Right. But I also get what the teacher is saying.
I get that too.
His whole thing is he didn't want anybody to know.
And I mean, maybe too, like his whole dissolving thing is just his last way to be like, I don't want anyone to know who I am.
Right, exactly. Like it just continues to be like, no. You're not going to find out who I am.
Right.
I'm going to make sure that
like I will
happen.
Forever be a mystery.
Yeah.
Oh, I kind of like that one. I mean, minus the times when they were mean to him.
Yeah. That made me really sad too. But then like, I liked how like there was a good amount of townsfolk that kind of came together and was like, no, we're not going to do that.
Yeah.
And like a lot of people who talked about him had like fond memories of him.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy in the video was talking about how like people were like really concerned about him when he got sick and like constantly like reporting about it. Like, he's not well, which is I think when the Connecticut Humane Society came in.
Yeah.
So his stories have pluses and minuses about humanity.
Yeah.
Some pluses, others you're like, well, that checks out.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I like that.
Thank you.
I like that one.
I liked this one too.
Well, nicely done.
It's funny because the Leatherman you'd think like, oh, scary.
Yeah. Well, because like you think Leatherface.
Yeah.
Like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Oh.
Ed Gein. Leatherface.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because Mackenzie was like, do you know who Leatherman is? And I said, no, I know who Leatherface is.
I didn't know his nickname.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the Leatherman, not scary, just misunderstood.
And very interesting.
Yeah. In the video, the guy has like a good message about like how we view people in situations that are typically out of their control.
Right.
So And it was made in 2022. So it's
yeah.
I do recommend going to watch it. It's like 50 minutes. And he does a good job.
Be in our works cited.
Like always.
Like always.
Which is in our notes, and you got to click on a link.
Yeah.
I was never sure if that was clear, if like people expected it to be like in the description.
Oh, yeah. It says works cited, and right under that is a link. And you click on that link.
Click on that, and then you got to scroll and find the state, and then you got to find the link. Good luck.
But it's all there.
It's all there.
So that's all that matters. Like us on all the things.
Yep. We've gotten some new followers.
Mm-hmm.
So hello to those.
Welcome.
Welcome. We're glad you're here. If you interact with our posts enough, you'll notice that I follow you back. And I will like yours. Because I'm like, wow, that is so nice of you to always like every single one of our things. I'm going to like yours too.
Yeah.
If you do that, then you can get a follow back.
Yeah.
Tell all your friends.
Yeah. Pyramid scheme. Just you tell 2 people, they tell 2 people, keep going on and forever. That's how it goes.
Mm-hmm. Well, you can say a game of telephone instead of a pyramid scheme because that sounds bad.
Okay, game of telephone. Play a game of telephone and tell everyone about us.
Just make sure you make it accurate. Don't like fuck shit up along the way.
Right. Well, not too hard. A scary state.
I meant like the description.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, stay scary.
Stay safe.